What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 72 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Monday, April 28th, 2025. I'm your host, Zach Malama. Before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the NFL, as what a weekend it was for the NFL Draft up at Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And let's start things off with the New York Jets, as they had a good couple of days up in Green Bay and grabbed a lot of key pieces for this upcoming season. And obviously, it all started off with the 7th overall pick. They take Armand Membou, the offensive tackle, the right tackle out of Missouri, and he's going to slot into a Jets offensive line that looks pretty complete heading into this season. Jets had a lot of options at the 7th overall pick. They could have gone tight end with Tyler Warren, a real strong tight end out of Penn State. However, they go offensive tackle here, and I think it's the right move. You had the right tackle in Membou and a lot of left tackles surrounding him on this draft board. And when you look at it, they would have had to convert one of those left tackles to a right tackle. Instead, they slot Membou into a great offensive line. When you look at Olu Fashanu, who they drafted last year, he's the left tackle now. And when you look at the rest of it, the interior offensive line with Elijah Vera Tucker, a first-round pick from a couple of years ago. And you also have John Simpson at left guard. He had a great season a season ago. And Joe Tippmann, a second-round pick, a former second-round pick, and he's playing center. I mean, this offensive line has the chance to be one of the best in football, if not the best in football, in just a couple of years. Maybe a little bit of development for those younger guys in Fashanu as well as Membou, just cleaning things up and getting them ready for the pros. Other than that, this offensive line is going to be scary good, like I said, and has the chance to be the best in football. And I think, right again, it was the right move for them based on not having to switch somebody or convert somebody to right tackle. They slot in Membou right there. And when you look at the rest of this Jets draft class, they go with Mason Taylor with the 10th overall pick in the second round. And obviously 42nd overall. He's a real strong tight end with a lot of power out of LSU, and he slots in as the Jets' probably number one tight end right now, and a good blocker as well, who could get out in space and catch a lot of balls from Justin Fields this season. So they get the weapon that they needed beside Garrett Wilson, but I do think they're going to rely on Breece Hall a lot out of the backfield as well as in the receiving game. He's going to be a big part of this Jets offense this season, and they're going to need him to be with Justin Fields coming in at QB. So they grabbed Mason Taylor, and then a lot of work on the defensive side. Azareye'h Thomas, he comes in at corner out of Florida State, a guy who is a projected second round pick. They get him in the third round with the 9th pick in the third round, 73rd overall. And I think that's a great move for the Jets as well, to bring in that experience that Thomas has. He was one of the best corners in the Power 5 conferences, and a target rate that was very low, and on an FSU team that was really, really bad last season. No offense on the other end wanted to go against Azareye'h Thomas. So he comes in, and obviously, that's a big addition for this Jets team. They also grabbed Malachi Moore, the safety out of Alabama, who comes in with, again, a lot of experience and a lot of power to come into this Aaron Glenn defense that he's making here in New York. And I think that's going to be a good move for the Jets as well, the experience that he brings in the SEC, and a 5-year safety at Alabama, a team captain a season ago. So they grab a couple of guys on the defensive side. The one questionable pick that a lot of people are still talking about is Arian Smith, the wide receiver out of Georgia. More so not the weapon that really the Jets need beside Garrett Wilson. It's more going to be Malachi Corley that a lot of people are looking at. Arian Smith, more of a deep threat above anything, and maybe even get some work in special teams as well as a returner. That's really what the Jets are looking for. They could have gone other ways, and a lot of voids still at the defensive tackle position, interior defensive line, that people could have looked at and said, yeah, that would be a big addition for this Jets team. But still, free agency not over, and the Jets still have a lot of options that they could go to for that interior defensive line. I think that's going to be the next move for this Jets team. But overall in this draft, I do like what the Jets did, and they grabbed some key pieces to really fill massive voids on the offensive side of the ball with Membu and Taylor, and then Thomas and Moore they bring in on the defensive side with the experience, like I said. So a good draft overall for this New York Jets team. On the other side for the Giants, you could say pretty much the same thing. The Giants don't really have too many things that they're looking desperately at right now, and they do look at the quarterback position and say, all right, maybe a development project. They do get Abdul Carter, though, at number 3 overall, the edge rusher out of Penn State. Yes, a couple of options that the Giants, could have gone. Travis Hunter ends up going the pick before them, though, and Cam Ward, of course, goes number 1 overall. There was a 3 above the rest in this draft class, and they get one of the 3 best players overall, and arguably maybe top 2 when you look at the Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter debate. And those 2 guys, of course, you got Cam Ward at number 1 overall, but even so, overall players, Carter and Hunter, a lot of people went back and forth between those 2 guys of who's the best player in the draft. And I'd still take Hunter. However, Abdul Carter is no slouch here, and he's going to be a real strong player on the defensive side for the Giants this year, and he's going to have an impact right away, coming from Penn State with that number 11 jersey that's sought after by a lot of guys that go to Penn State, and I think he's really stepped up to that name and stepped up to that jersey. And I think even you could see so far the ask for Lawrence Taylor's number 56, probably not going to get it. I mean, still word coming out of whether Taylor's going to end up giving it to him, but you just love the confidence from Abdul Carter, and he's going to have a strong impact, like I said, for the Giants this season. The rest of the guys, though, when you look at Jackson Dart, who the Giants traded back into the first round to get more of a development type of project, they do have Russell Wilson, they do have as well as Jameis Winston, who are going to be the lead 2 guys. And Jackson Dart's going to sit behind those guys for this year. Still a question of what it's going to be for the future, but this is more, like I said, a development type of project. Giants saw a quarterback and they went to get him. I do respect that from Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. They do need a quarterback for the future and still deciding on that. But their focus right now is the moment and this season coming up, because their jobs are on the line and the Giants could go any which way after this season. This is almost one last chance, you would say, for Daboll and Schoen, and they need to really prove to the owner, John Mara, that they deserve to stay there for the next couple of seasons. So it's all about this year, and they did grab one more weapon that I think is a big one, and Cam Scatterbo, a running back out of Arizona State, who had a great year for the Sun Devils and obviously made it to the college football playoff and the tournament that it was a season ago, and had a real strong impact in the couple of games that he played in the CFP and, of course, the Big 12 championship, which Arizona State ended up coming out on top. So they grab him as well, add him to this running back room, a real strong, powerful runner that they could put next to Tyrone Tracy Jr. So we'll see what happens there. But the Giants, I like the draft class. Like I said, not really looking at need, more looking at the best player available and the guys that they think right now can really help them this season with, like I said, Daboll and Schoen with their jobs on the line. So we'll see what happens, but that was a massive storyline for the Giants as well. Jackson Dart was, because of the quarterback class. And there's a guy in Shedeur Sanders who dropped plenty in this draft. And when you look at the quarterback room overall, Cam Ward goes number 1. Then you have Jackson Dart to the Giants. And then Tyler Shuck goes in the second round out of Louisville. He goes to the Saints, followed by Jalen Milroe at the end of the third round out of Alabama. He goes to the Seattle Seahawks. And then Cleveland took another quarterback right before Shedeur Sanders. 2 rounds earlier, though, the quarterback Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. in the end, Shedeur Sanders, a lot of people just did not want to deal with the noise that comes with him. And that mainly is his father, Deion Sanders, who is Shedeur's agent. Of course, a lot of these teams met with Shedeur Sanders, but they also met with his agent. His agent is his father in Deion Sanders. It's not the same type of interview process as some of these other high profile agents coming in the door, and they've dealt with this before. Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, you know what you're going to get almost right away from these two guys. And when you look at Shedeur, the talent that he has, he's probably ahead of a lot of these players, four of these quarterbacks. In my mind, I think he's the second rated quarterback behind Cam Ward in this draft class. I think that's a good spot for him, whether he went late first round, middle first round, or even in the second round, he should have gone before those four quarterbacks in Dart, Shuck, Milroe, and Gabriel. However, you cannot blame these teams for not wanting to deal with the noise. I think the biggest thing in the end for Shedeur is that when you look at a lot of the decisions that these coaches make, he's going to go to his father on almost all of them, making sure that it's the right move. NFL coaches do not want that. NFL GMs do not want that. You questioning their decisions, and they want players that are going to buy in. And almost that feels like a culture killer in my mind in a guy like Shedeur Sanders, a guy that he's not been in trouble. He's not been in any serious situations. However, because he has the ego and the attitude that comes with it, and his father does as well, that's what NFL teams do not want, and they end up putting him on a do not draft list for their general manager. So Cleveland ends up picking him at 144 overall, where he should have gone way earlier than that. One of the biggest drops based on projections in NFL history. And now something that Shedeur Sanders has to make up for. He has a lot to prove. However, he heads into a quarterback room that is, he could very easily be the number one name on the list by the start of the season. He's in a room now with Deshaun Watson, who's coming off that Achilles injury, probably not going to play another game in Cleveland. I think they might end up just eating his salary and cutting him, or looking for a trade option in the end. Or then they look at the other guys in that room. You got a couple of veterans in Joe Flacco as well as Kenny Pickett. And then you have the two guys they just drafted, Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. So he has a better chance than anyone to step up and be the number one quarterback on this Cleveland Browns team. He has to take it. And Deion especially now understands the risk of what he did during the pre-draft process, especially when you looked at a lot of those tweets that he sent out and specific interviews that he gave, where he said that his son only wanted to play for specific teams. NFL owners do not want to hear that. And if they do hear that, they're not going to pick you because they know that you're not going to buy into their project. So that's a big time storyline. The biggest storyline, of course, coming out of this weekend in the NFL draft. But we'll see what happens in Cleveland as Shedeur Sanders goes number 144 overall. But that was a great weekend of the NFL draft, and a lot for Jets and Giant fans to be proud of in Green Bay this weekend. And when you look at, let's shift things to basketball, as the Knicks were playing all throughout this draft weekend. They played on Thursday, and I talked about that game on Thursday's episode. Game 3, where the Knicks took on the Pistons up in Detroit. And obviously, this one was tied at 1-1 the series. And obviously, the Pistons grabbed game 2 in a close one down at the Garden. Knicks had some points to prove heading back to Detroit, and they handled both of them. Let's start off with game 3, 118-116. The Knicks win this one behind 31 points from Karl Anthony Towns, and he was a difference maker in this game. A huge win in the end for the New York Knicks to give them that 2-1 series lead, a little bit of cushion as well. But then you have Jalen Brunson as well, dropping 30 against this Pistons team. And give credit to the Knicks. They looked really good in this game. 30-9 Brunson finished with. And in the end, the Knicks were the tougher team and deserved to win this game in game 3. Then it got interesting in game 4 yesterday. 94-93, the Knicks win this one, and it all ended in controversy with Josh Hart jumping into, it looked like, Tim Hardaway Jr. on the final three-pointer of the game. However, this was a game that was called very nicely both ways, and there could have been a lot of foul calls both sides, but the officials, give them credit. They let them play. In my opinion, clearly a foul. He did make contact with Tim Hardaway Jr., and in today's NBA game, that is 1000% a foul. And even the officials after the game on the official report did say it should have been called a foul. It was a foul. However, when you look at it, Knicks side of it, Knicks point of view, they take it and they run with it as they get the 3-1 series lead. Now heading back to the Garden. If I was a Pistons fan, I'd be very, very angry. But also, they did have some opportunities to really close out this game. And when you look at the Pistons having a cushion like they did in the fourth quarter, a solid lead that they had, I believe it was all the way up to 9 or 10, and it ended up going to 10. I think when you look at that, they got to close that out. 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and you blow a 10-point lead, and you give it to the Knicks, and to give them an opportunity to get back into the game. And that really is the bigger story rather than the non-foul call on the Knicks and Josh Hart there. So obviously, Pistons fans are still very angry about that. Rightfully so. It was a foul. However, there was a lot of time to really close this game out before the Knicks then stormed back and grabbed the victory. So the Knicks head into Game 5 against the Pistons. That one's going to take place tomorrow night, 7:30 start at MSG. And then the Knicks come in as 5.5-point favorites, total sitting at 213.5. Knicks looking to close out the series. They should do it here. However, recent history has not been kind to the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. Very tough record when closing out games. I think they've only won a couple since the year 2000. So that's a massive, massive stone that the Knicks have to get over. And that's really the storyline heading into this one. They should close it out, but will they in Game 5 at MSG? If they don't, Pistons are going to go back to Detroit looking very hungry for a win. It may not be as easy this time around than it was in Games 3 and Games 4. I think if the Pistons are able to grab a win, this series might be going 7. So the Knicks probably got to close this one out, I would say, tomorrow night, or it's going to be a bit of trouble, and you may have to head back to MSG for Game 7 later this week. So we'll see what happens, but the Knicks taking on the Pistons tomorrow night. Make sure you tune in, 7:30 start at MSG, and the Knicks are 5.5-point favorites heading into that one, Game 5 at the Garden. Let's move things to baseball and the New York Mets, who are in action as we speak and are probably going to close out a nice win against the Washington Nationals. They are up 6-0 in the 6th inning right now, and probably going to split this series against the Nationals, a 4-game set down in Washington, where the Mets actually had the first couple of blips of the season that you're really looking at and saying, yeah, that's not great, not a good look. Of course, you had that series against Minnesota that they lost in pretty bad fashion in the 10th inning, where they lose that series 2-1, and they lost it in the rubber game on that Wednesday, April 16th. Then you look at this series, and 2 out of the first 3 games they lose to Washington, and Stanek is charged for the loss in both of those games after 2 blown saves. So that's a very bad part of this Mets team, where when you look at all they've done in the last couple of years and the positives that have come with it, then there's times for the negatives, and it almost catches Mets fans by surprise. And obviously it's almost a wake-up call for these guys on this Mets roster that every series is going to be different, and it's not going to be as easy going up against some divisional opponents. They need to really step up for those games. It's a little bit different with those other teams that they've played. A couple of those teams in the American League that's been really weak so far this season. The Athletics, the Minnesota Twins, you even look at the Toronto Blue Jays, who are struggling just a little bit. And they did lose, of course, that opening day series against the Houston Astros. But when you look at this series overall and those 2 losses, Stanek just did not have his best stuff. course, the injury to Edwin Diaz has been a scary one so far. However, he did close it out on Saturday, wasn't available for Sunday's game, and it ends up costing the New York Mets after they were up 7-1 in the seventh inning. And it all started a rally from Washington with a drop fly ball from Juan Soto, just lost it in the sun and it dropped right in front of him. And all of a sudden, a monster inning of 5 runs comes in for Washington, and then they end up tying it in the ninth, and then they win it on a walk-off. So it's a bad look for the New York Mets. However, I wouldn't freak out just yet. It's one of those wake-up call losses that obviously the Mets so far today have bounced back nicely from up 6-0 and now the top of the 7. So a bad series a little bit in based on expectations for the Mets, and after they've beaten up on some really solid teams and divisional opponents, as of course the Philadelphia Phillies the previous series, they beat them up and swept them in 3 games at Citi Field. It's a bit of a bad look going down to Washington and only grabbing 2 of the 4 games. But that's really just how the MLB season goes, 1 of 162, and the Mets move on. They are going to have a bit of a tougher series, in my mind, heading into this 3-game set. Tomorrow they start against the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are solid right now, real solid in the NL West, and in my opinion, probably going to be a playoff team. It's going to be a strong fight for the wild card in the National League, and we could see 3 NL West teams fighting for that one spot, or for those 3 spots, excuse me. So we'll see what happens with that, but this series overall is going to be a tough one for New York, and they're going to have to pass a solid test here. It's going to be Eduardo Rodriguez on the mound for the Diamondbacks tomorrow. The lefty, who's got a 4.40 ERA, is 1-2 on the year. David Peterson getting the ball for the Mets, 1-1 this season, 3.29 ERA for New York. Like I said, not going to be an easy series, and they're going to have to pass the test here. Arizona's got a tough and gritty lineup that is not going to make it easy on the lefty and David Peterson. So we'll see what happens. Make sure you tune in. 7:10 start tomorrow, as it's Rodriguez and Peterson started a 3-game set. Diamondbacks and Mets at Citi Field. On the other side of New York, we'll finish things off with the Yankees, and they get a series win in the end against the Toronto Blue Jays. They grab 2 of the 3 games, and they sweep a doubleheader yesterday. 11-2, they win the first game. Fried over Gausman, and Kevin Gausman had one of the worst innings you will ever see, and one of the worst innings you'll see this season, with a 53-pitch 3rd inning that the Yankees just completely took it to him, and he gets taken out of the game, ends up getting ejected as well, complaining to the umpire, had plenty of walks as well in this one, had 5 walks overall in this game. Just a bad outing for Gausman, but obviously, the Yankees lineup really tested them here, and 6 runs in the 3rd inning was the difference for the Yankees. 11-2 in the first game, and then the second game, like I said, a 5-1 win, and they beat up on the Toronto Blue Jays after they probably should have swept this series. But Devin Williams, the story coming out in the last couple of days that he has been removed from the closer role. It's given to Luke Weaver. And Weaver, who was really, really strong down the stretch a season ago for a team that won the AL pennant, that's a big move for the Yankees to have Luke Weaver as almost a backup option there behind Devin Williams, who's really, really struggled so far. They just need to settle him down in a couple of good outings in whether it's the 7th or 8th inning. I think that'll settle him heading into these future series, and probably the next month or so, I think he'll be back into regular Devin Williams form. He's just not a good pitcher in April. He never has been a good pitcher in April. This shouldn't come too much of a surprise to Yankee fans based on those numbers. However, the spotlight of New York, he's going to get a lot of attention, and he already has in that closer role. And I think it was the right time for a move for Aaron Boone and the New York Yankees after that blown save, on Friday, where the Yankees lost that one 4-2 in the 9th inning. And then, of course, looking at this game, 5-1 on Sunday, and J.C. Escara, as well as Aaron Judge, and finally Trent Grisham, all 3 of those guys homer And Chris Bassett is charged with the second loss of the season, 4 earned runs. He allows in this one in a good 6th inning for the Yankees after it was tied at 1. Judge, then a double, an RBI double from Jason Dominguez, who's looked really good so far in the last couple of days for the Yankees. Yes, he's still batting .238, but you're getting this guy really acclimated to everyday MLB play, and I think that's a positive sign for the Yankees, even though he's batting, whether it's 6th or 7th in the lineup. Key contributor there towards the bottom of the lineup, but the power that he has and the ability to change the game with one swing. And JC Escarra had an RBI single in the 6th, then finished things off with a long home run to right center into the bleachers in the bottom of the 8th. And some positive signs there for Escarra, who comes in as the catcher for yesterday's game. But as for the Yankees, good series overall. They win against a divisional opponent, and then they head into another division series here. A 6:35 start tonight, as it's going to be Will Warren on the mound down at Camden Yards, and he's going to take on Sagano, who comes in with a 2-1 record, 3.54 ERA. Warren himself 1-0 on the season, a 4.79 ERA, but has looked a lot better in the last couple of starts. And when you look at the Orioles on the other side, really struggling so far this season, 5th place in the AL East. Another chance for the Yankees to get things going, and another chance for a good outing for Will Warren. So we'll see what happens, but make sure you tune in the rest of this series as well, as it's going to be Yankees and Orioles down in Camden Yards. And obviously we'll recap this in the next couple of weeks. No Thursday episode this week. We'll move on to Monday's episode, so make sure you tune in to that one. But as for now, that will do it for episode 72 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malamuth. Thanks for watching. No episode on Thursday. Talk to you all on Monday.